Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience and for rolling with us as we moved everything quite quickly over to the virtual format for the Transformative Teaching track. My name is Erin Doran. I am the Director of Research and Evaluation for Catch the Next, and I will be filling in for Allegra Villarreal, who is under the weather this morning. So I'll be moderating the webinars and introducing our presenters. I will be uploading the slides that Keylan Morgan will be presenting shortly. But that'll be available in the handout section. And if you have any trouble accessing it by the time the webinar ends, just let me know and I'll be happy to email those to you. Just to remind you that for now, everybody is in mute. More than anything, that's just to make sure that there's no background noises or anything like that that could be disruptive to the presenter or just to anyone else. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you are more than welcome to use the questions and answer function. That would be wonderful as a place to go ahead and log your questions as you are reacting to Keylan's presentation. And at the end, we can have a few minutes for questions and answers. Just a quick update to Keylan's presentation. We're going to try to end by 10, only because like everything else that's quick moving, Keylan has a meeting that he needs to get to, so we want to be respectful of his time. If we end up having more questions than we have time for, then Keylan has been gracious enough to go ahead and take questions via email that we can share out with folks. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Keylan. Keylan is a program specialist for the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, as well as being a PhD student in the graduate program in developmental education at Texas State University. Prior to joining the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, he worked as a director for the TRIO Upward Bound program and has over 15 years experience in higher education and student success initiatives. And today he will be presenting on Corequisites. And so, one sec as I do that.
Okay, here we go.
Yep, Keylan, the floor is yours.
All right. Is the presentation live?
Let me see. Yes, sir, it is.
All right, then we'll go ahead and get started for the sake of time. And in advance, I'm going to run through some of this information fairly fast. However, I'm trying to get through the information in an effort to give a little bit of time towards the end to participate in question and answer. Originally, it was designed for an hour-and-a-half session, but due to another commitment that I just could not get out of, I'm only available for the hour. So jumping right in, one of the still fresh things at the coordinating board, our new commissioner, Dr. Harrison Keller, he hails to us from the University of Texas at Austin, where he was a special assistant to the president, Dr. Fenvis. And he oversaw a variety of initiatives. And in his role thus far at the coordinating board, he's settling in and developing his strategic plan. And we're just still waiting to see all of the great things that Dr. Keller will work with us to accomplish in his tenure at the coordinating board. So I just definitely wanted to allow you to see a face to put with the name as we move forward with the new administration at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Here's a quote that stands out that I really liked in terms of justifying, or not justifying, kind of cementing our relationship to what it is that we do for higher education across the state of Texas. And he says, as higher education, window just popped up in my way, my apologies. As higher education leaders, we have to recognize our unique and embrace our unique public responsibilities, expand opportunities for more students than we've ever served before, and innovate on behalf of tomorrow's Texas. The future of our state and nation depends on it. If this quote wasn't more true than now, particularly dealing with a pandemic which has totally disrupted the normal business operations of our institutions across the state, now is the time to be innovative, where we have to, I always say, break the braces off the box and really think outside the box in terms of how we're going to serve our students and increase those success outcomes that we want to see the needle move for on our respective campuses. So as I was introduced, I work in the Division for College Readiness and Success at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And as it pretty much says, we do all things in the educational pipeline. So we have area that focuses particularly on access to higher education. Then we have an area that focuses on general success in higher education. And then we have completion. And then we have an area that strategically focuses on outreach initiatives. Here are some of our strategic priorities for your review, but I want to highlight one, and that's implement programs and training to support high quality college advising. We're strategically working within our units in our division to develop a plan to increase the quality of advising from the K-12 side all the way through higher ed. So we're looking as early as working with students as the 8th grade and making resources available for K-12 in an effort to improve that advising experience for students to help aid students with making those necessary decisions that they need for college coursework, whether it be dual credit, a concurrent enrollment program, or something like that, to make sure that they're taking the courses that they need to do in order to ultimately achieve what our commissioner refers to as a credential of value. Many of you are familiar with our current 60 by 30 TX, our strategic plan for the state of Texas for higher education. And I'll briefly just touch on the basics, which overall, this graphic, you'll see the 60 by 30 that sits on top of the 3 boxes below is the overarching goal that by the year 2030, that 60% of our Texans ages 25 to 34 will have of credential, and we measure that from anything from a level 1 certificate all the way through a master's degree. And again, with the completion goal, marketable skills goal, and student debt, they undergird and hold up the 60 by 30. All of those have to be on target in order for us to achieve our overarching goal. So with completion, that by the year 2030, that we'll achieve an additional 550,000 completions, marketable skills. And just the caveat to marketable skills, as it's currently published in terms of institutions being required to develop and essentially let students know about those marketable skills that they'll gain through their programs of study. That one is under review right now in terms of maybe a redesign in which it will be more inward focused on the student, where it's the institution invested in the student to always be knowledgeable and always be aware of those knowledgeable skills or those marketable skills that the student is gaining throughout their coursework. So versus being prescriptive with the institution to just tell the student what it is that they're going to get out of it, it's empowering the student to really own in and critically think, reflect about those skills that they're getting, because in the academic experience, what one's experience is might not be another student's experience. So that's the direction that the marketable skills goal may go in. So just to note that. And student debt, that by the year 2030, that when Texans graduate from our public institutions, that their first year of annual wages will not exceed, I believe it's 40 to 50% of their first year annual wage. And we know that all of these are heavy lifts, particularly for our community colleges. And I'll share a little bit more detail about why that is in a little bit. But I say all of that to say we need your help, respective of your role in higher education. This is the higher education plan for the state, and we cannot do it without you. So why is 60 by 30 TX important? You see some metrics here, but the one I'll highlight is essentially of the 11.6 million jobs created in post-recession, 11.5 million went to workers with at least some college education. So when we say at least some college education, and I said when we measure the completions for 60 by 30 TX, that is anything from a level 1 certificate, that we have to understand and be careful with that conversation. Oftentimes when students, you'll see commercials that say, college is not for me, so I got a certificate in XYZ. 9 times out of 10, outside of any proprietary programs, when we talk about our certificate programs, they're housed where? At community colleges. So college is for students. So with at least some college education, and the majority of those jobs that are being created for the future will require some type of credential. And here's a graphic to illustrate kind of that metric that I just highlighted, that we're all familiar with, that one graphic where it shows over a lifetime period, a person with a person with an associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctorate degree, or professional degree will earn X number of dollars in more than that person with just a high school diploma. And the job capture, those capturing the jobs in the market, is going in the same direction. Here's some quick progress updates on the completion targets for underrepresented populations in regards to 60 by 30. And you can see that the gray upward arrow is pointing to where we want to be in that respective year. However, it shows where we are with the colored bars in the chart. And each year, the gap widens in terms of missing that threshold. And that comes to definitely helping us understand that we have to do more as higher education administrators and state policymakers to create access and assist students with doing the big 3 things I feel that institutions of higher education are responsible for with regard to their students, which are having students be retained. Having students be retained, having students, I think it paused for some odd reason. Having students be retained, having them persist, and having them graduate. Aaron, is my screen frozen? Or is it moving? I think hopefully we're back online. It's moving for me, but I don't know if it's moving for you. There we go. My apologies for the quick technical difficulty. There we go. All right. And another metric to help support why your role is so important is the high school to college target. The high school to college target measures those students that graduate from high school and in the immediate fall semester after high school graduation, they enroll in a program of study at an institution of higher education. With that, you can see that this is where we want to be with our grayscale targets on the right, and this is where we actually are with our colored uh, graphics on the left. And where we are, 52% in 16, 52% in 17, 52% 18, we're relatively flat, which means we're not keeping up with the pace of our targets to meet our 20 by 30 goal when it relates to high school to college enrollment. So we have to do an even much better job of having the students that do come through the doors of our institutions of higher education be retained, have them persist, and have them graduate from the programs of study that they enroll in. So when we transition this conversation a little bit, I'll share a little bit of data regarding college readiness. So statewide, generally, almost 60% of our students come through our doors college ready. However, when we break that pie out into 2-year versus 4-year college experiences, you see a vast difference. You see that the 2-year colleges almost reflect just the statewide data itself, juxtaposed against the universities or the 4-year institutions, where only about 14% of the students come in not college ready. And that's easily explained due to the fact of admission criteria and the metrics that they have in place, that the majority of the students entering the doors of our 4-year institutions are usually college ready or near college ready, again juxtaposed against the 2-year institutions, our community and technical colleges, which are open enrollment, where 60% of the students generally are not college ready in one of more areas. Almost half of the students remain not ready from fall 2017 after 1 year. So when we look at the fall 2017 cohort, we looked at them again in fall 2018, and this is what it showed us, that for just taking a highlight from this slide, 60% of the students that came in fall 2017 that were not prepared in math, 1 year later, they were still not prepared in math, meaning they had not completed a first college level course, or they had not met their TSI requirement for math. So we have a very heavy lift, and you see the metrics for reading and writing there as well. And then this transposes into graduation rates, where for community colleges, there's a 10 percentage point gap for students who come in college ready versus not college ready. And for 4-year institutions, it widens to 30%. So when we look at those two metrics, I don't have them side by side, but this whole notion of when we talk about developmental education and acceleration and innovation and reform in developmental education, say something just happened again. And developmental reform in education, we have to take in consideration that all of these things work in concert, again, to move the needle of the metrics that we need to see moving in order for us to meet our 60 by 30 TX plan. And I know a lot of times, a lot of the data is presented in isolation, so it's hard to kind of put the whole story together, but hopefully, as a result of this presentation, you'll see a little bit with my pros and the data that's presented, how some of these pieces come together. And when we talk about this concept of college readiness, the first thing I'll note is when we use it in the K-12 space versus the higher education space, it has a little different meaning. However, for the purposes of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, when we say college readiness, we're looking at a student's ability to successfully complete a freshman level course without the need for remediation. And we talk about college readiness in terms of statute, we're talking about the Texas Success Initiative, which really has two parts. It has the Texas Success Initiative, which is the actual statute, and then we have the Texas Success Initiative assessment, which most are familiar with, which is the only approved assessment as of 2013 that could be used to determine college readiness for institutions. And then I shared with you about the Division of College Readiness. And at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, in general, we have a number of initiatives that support the goals of not only 60 by 30 TX, but the work that you do. We have Corequisite expansion with House Bill 2223. And then we also have Grad Techs, which is a program designed to have students with a considerable number of accrued hours that have stopped out or dropped out, to get them back into the pipeline and have them gain that completion. We have Advise Texas, which works with our Advise Texas Core, which are college students that are trained to be college advisors that go into the high schools to help students understand their educational opportunities and help them with those critical processes that are needed to be done for the students to successfully transition from high school into a program of study in higher education. We have Generation Texas Virtual Advising, which is ADVI, our chatbot, and we're excited about the use of the artificial intelligence in terms of assisting statewide with advising. And you'll be learning more information about that pretty soon. And we have the Are You Ready campaign, which is our challenge to institutions to kind of flip that whole notion of how we traditionally think of students being college ready, in terms of, if you're going to strategically target said group of students to come to your institution from said demographic area, from said cultural background, the onus is on them to be college ready. We do understand that. But however, if you're strategically targeting those groups, the onus is on you as well. And you have a significant part in their success that you must own as an institution of higher education. So versus just the student being college ready, hey, are you ready? Are you adequately ready to serve those students that you're bringing through the doors of your campus? So if you have a high developmental education population, do you have innovation in developmental education? If you are a Hispanic serving, if you're a historically Black college or university, if you are a multiracial campus, if you have that designation, are you ready to serve the students that you have coming to your campus? And that's where I transition specifically to focus on developmental education and transitioning and transforming the future. So I talked a little bit about how we support co-requisite expansion. And when we look at co-requisites, the first thing I really want to tell you, because I know some are still have their opinions about House Bill 2223 and how we feel that it does well for students or not well for students. But at the end of the day, the research tells us that the sooner students complete those first college level courses, the more likely they are to be those three things that I keep repeating. They're likely to persist, they're likely to be retained, and they're more likely to graduate. So when students are inundated with those 2 and 3 level developmental education systems, some would argue that, well, those who complete the sequence actually are successful in the college level course. And my usual response is, well, they should be, because when you think about how our semester credit hour structure works and things like that, for a developmental education course, sometimes that particular DE course can go all the way up to 96 contact hours. So if you apply that, let's just say it was 2 levels, 1 lower level, 1 intermediate, and then exit level, that could be upwards of 300 hours of development that a student needs to be successful in a 48-hour contact class. And I figure with that much preparation, you should be successful. However, what we miss in that narrative is who's not represented. Dr. Suzanne Morales-Vale presented a pretty enlightening data piece in the major policy discussion she did last fall with to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And if I remember it correct, it said about 5% of those students that were truncated in those systems were actually making it to attempt the first college level course. So we as a state must do what we can to be innovative to help have those students have access to those first level courses faster. And everything with the research is very supportive of co-requisite models. So looking here about the first college level course completions just across the state, we're trending upwards and we're doing okay. I'll highlight math though. For math, we have to understand that we still have some work to do, where that's the area where we're seeing the most flat progression over the years. It has some dips and steep incline from 2014 to 15. However, from 15 to 18, it's relatively flat. So with developmental education reform, we've done a lot over the past 10 years. Non-course competency-based options, NCBOs, those can be free to students, and we always like to highlight that. And one thing about NCBOs is they offer you a much more flexible platform to really specifically address the individual needs of students, their strengths, give credit for their strengths, and own in on their areas of weakness to make sure that they have that just-in-time support in that particular model, that they're only doing what they need to do, versus the traditional model of developmental education where no matter what your strengths are, everybody gets the same thing. And that's where we have students that might miss the math cut score by 1 point, but they're in a 3-hour developmental education course with maybe another student who missed it by 20 points. Do those students honestly need the same level of intervention? We've integrated reading and writing. We're actively promoting holistic advising and placement. And again, as it currently stands, holistic advising and placement is using multiple measures to determine what's the best required developmental education intervention for a student. Nothing tells you you have to put a student in a 3-hour DE course. Note that the institutions locally determine what those developmental ed structures and sequences look like on their respective campuses. And again, Corequisites is one of the most studied models and is showing most promise, particularly for underrepresented students. So real quick, I know you're familiar with what a co-requisite model is. However, here's a graphic that the RAND Corporation put together that really shows it, that in traditional pathway of developmental education, you have to succeed in the developmental education course or courses, and then you get to progress on to the college level course, depending your success in those developmental ed courses. However, the co-requisite approach allows the student to enroll in the developmental education course as well as the college level, the first college level course. So the course that they would not have been able to enroll into semester 2, 3, or in some cases 4 with the traditional pathway, under the co-requisite approach, they enroll in the first college level course in that first semester. And it's paired with a just-in-time developmental course or intervention in which the student receives the necessary support to be successful in that first college level course. And that moves us to House Bill 2223, which hopefully you are familiar with. And House Bill 2223 requires institutions to scale their co-requisite models. And at the highest implementation, which will be this upcoming fall 2021, that at least 75% of the institutions students that are enrolled in developmental education coursework. So we're not looking at the entire population of DE. We're looking at only those that are actually enrolled in developmental education work, with the exception of some students. And they have to be enrolled in a co-requisite model. And again, the institutions have full discretion on what those co-requisite models look like, but the kicker here is based on the student's performance in the developmental education course, it has no bearing on whether or not the student can continue in the first college level course. So when we look at outcomes for House Bill 2223 in fall 2018, and that's for eligible DE students after one semester in community and technical colleges, we see that 55% of the students in a co-requisite model met their TSI math requirement, juxtaposed against 29% that were not enrolled in a co-requisite model. And then 43% of those students completed a first college level course, juxtaposed against that 1% of those who completed a first college level course that were not enrolled in a co-requisite model. And when I talk about the first college level course, I'm talking specifically about a TSI allowable course, because the train of thought might be, well, of course that's correct. If they're not in a co-requisite model, they shouldn't be enrolled in the first college level course. But keep in mind, for various situations, institutions do have the discretion to, in exceptional cases, place students into a first college level course before they do their TSI testing. So that might explain some of that 1%. And then you see the numbers for reading and writing as well. As I said, scaling up of co-requisite enrollment accelerated first college level course completion, and that's what this is all about. And we had approximately 11,500 more successful first college level course completions in fall 2018 than we did in fall 2017. And of course, in fall 2017, House Bill 2223 didn't exist. But what we really want to highlight here is that's only at the 25% implementation level in fall 2018 that we saw 11,500 more first college level course completions. So what does this mean? We have 11,500 potentially a number of students that are now developing more momentum than they would if they were stuck in a traditional DE pathway to obtaining a credential. They now have an academic level course, a first college level course under their belt. So heed these numbers as well, that we had 1,700, almost 1,800 more first college level course completions for African American students, and just over 5,000 more successful first college level students for Hispanic students. And what does that mean? That means that all of these students traditionally would not have had the opportunity. All of the students that represented these completions would not have had the opportunity to enroll in those first college level courses had it not been for House Bill 2223. So we definitely want to present this data to you to help you understand that co-requisites are moving the needle in some student success metrics across the state. Here's some recommendations for our statewide plan that was published in the fall of 2018, and it's to move to 100% co-requisites by fall 2023. So I know that's scary to a lot of people, but what I always share with particularly faculty and staff when they push back against that metric is making data-driven decisions. The data is telling us that co-requisite models are working. So if we move to 100% co-requisite models, we can then focus on varying the level of interventions available to students. So again, I shared earlier in the presentation that we're encouraging institutions to really own in on really own in on what types of interventions best fit their students. So again, if a student misses the math TSI benchmark by 1 point, should they be in the same intervention as a student who missed the TSI math benchmark by 15 points? And that's a real issue that we're addressing across the state and helping institutions work through. The next recommendation, all community colleges will have some type of AEL partnership or be an AEL provider through the Texas Workforce Commission. Right now, we're trending well with that. However, we have some work to do. And this is really important because when a student, an institution feel a student is not prepared for a co-requisite model, or it really is in case of an academic basic education, ABE level, let's just say 1 through 3 or 1 through 4 student, is actually defined by 1 through 4, but we actually encourage institutions to consider putting those ABE level 4 students in co-requisite models as well. So when we look at that adult basic ed population, that we really want them not to necessarily be forced into a co-requisite model, but if that is their where their skill level, that you have an adult basic education program, particularly our community colleges, that that student can be enrolled in, where they can get the necessary skills that they need to then transition back to developmental education and then into the co-requisite pipeline. So we want to scale and enhance the high school prep course. To all of our institutions, if you work with a partner, if you work as a dual credit partner with your local ISDs, we strongly encourage you to, if they're not offering the college preparatory course, see what you can do to partner with them to build a successful college preparatory course that will help students have one more thing in their pocket to come into the higher ed pipeline as college ready. I shared with you earlier in the presentation that there's a 10 percentage gap for community colleges and a 30 percentage point gap for four-year institutions, respectively, for those that come in college ready versus not college ready. So it behooves us to do all that we can as institutions of higher education to make sure that we partner well with our K-12 system to increase the number of students that are coming to us college ready. And the first thing I'll share with you regarding that and kind of thinking forward is, we know House Bill 5 does not belong to higher education. It is rooted in the Texas Education Code in House Bill 5. So it's very much a K-12 thing. However, we know that this particular exemption, when we look at the data, is woefully underutilized. However, when we look at the outcomes data, that students that do come in with the use of a college prep exemption, or they are successful in those first college level courses. And last recommendation, to provide support for all students who are struggling and or underprepared. What this means is we want to expand our support net, so to speak, beyond just those that do not meet the TSI benchmarks in reading, writing, or math. But we do know that we have a number of first time in college students, returning students, adult learners that come to us that may barely meet the benchmark, but yet struggle in those first college level courses. And we want to make sure that we're doing all that we can as a state, again, to support all students in obtaining a credential of value. And the last point that I'll make about this in regards to support for all students. Just because a student is college ready by proxy of meeting the benchmark of the TSI doesn't mean that they're actually ready. And I know I could probably, if I could see your faces, I would know that I have some faculty wholeheartedly agreeing with me. So We're also encouraging faculty to think forward into requiring strategic help supports for students in the context of your courses. We often find that faculty are very reluctant to require any type of supplemental instruction, mandatory tutoring as part of their courses, just by proxy of thinking that that implies I'm requiring you to participate in developmental education. No, that's being very intentional in guiding the success outcomes of courses. So we really want you to really think about and work with your institution to maximize ways that those required supports can be built into your first college level courses, because I've heard it firsthand over and over again. Students do not do optional. And a very crass example, I was doing a site visit at an institution, and a young lady, I do typically small focus groups, just asking about what their co-requisite experiences are, just to gain more information from the field. And the young lady shared with me from a community college that, you know, I really like this concept of a co-requisite model. She said, honestly, at first, when my advisor told me that I had to do this course, and particularly this community college was using an ALP model, where for every hour in the college level course, they're in the developmental ed support. So she had a 3-hour college algebra class in addition to a 3-hour dev ed support class. And in that, she said, at first I didn't like it. I was scared. 6 hours of math. I didn't think I was good at math. But although we have a tutoring center, we have supplemental instruction, we have a math lab, she said, and I'm aware of all of those resources, I probably wouldn't have used them if I wasn't in this co-requisite model and it wasn't required of me. So that's firsthand from the student's perspective in terms of what they're actually seeking from faculty. Tell me what I have to do to be successful. And here's some additional recommendations. At the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board under the new administration with Dr. Harrison Keller, one of the things that I think my screen froze again. One of the things that he is really big on is for us to not be a compliance agency, but for us to truly be a thought partner with our institutions of higher education. So with that, we have to understand that we're not here to essentially tell you what to do, but to provide you with a strong framework and to provide you with interpretation of rule and regulation in order for you to best do what you do, and that's serve your students. Explore the use of technology, particularly how it can enhance co-requisite models and other reforms. And what we mean by that is not everything has to be this traditional course. Utilize the non-course based options. We have a number of institutions across the state, particularly in math, using ALEX, Newton, and programs such as those to provide individualized responses to students' needs for developmental education. And last but not least, review and outline evidence-based practices and ways of demonstrating college readiness to include multiple measures. And if any of you are familiar, we currently have a request for applications where the intent to apply has already passed. However, we have a request for applications where we're actually allowing institutions to propose multiple measures models that will deem a student college ready. Now, let me note and let me be clear, this is not something that any institution can do, only those that will be approved under this particular grant competition. Multiple measures in its current form only exist as determining the best required intervention for the needs of a student for developmental education. But under this RFA, we're really pushing the needle to see if we consider high school GPA, if we really consider high school course taking patterns, are these measures sound enough to give one more way that a student can demonstrate college readiness, particularly for those who did not demonstrate college readiness while they were in, at least for the THECB threshold with passing the Texas Success Initiative or obtaining an exemption prior to graduating from high school. So looking at that group, the underprepared students coming into higher ed and giving them one more way to be deemed college ready based on measures of a longer timeline. We know that the TSIA test only measures what's happening on that day, given everything that you have to deal with. But are there other measures that will work to, are there other measures to help deem a student college ready? The date is on here. My apologies. The launch date is August 31st, 2020. And here's the Tsi A2 Development Timeline. We recently had our item review process in February that went extremely well, where new items for the TSI A2 to be added to the item bank were reviewed by a number of professionals from across the state. And I'll give you a little bit more detail on that just so you can understand the intentionality and the framework that we're using for the assessment. So with the item review process, we bring together experts from K-12, higher ed, and adult education to make sure that we have a varied pool of items to measure a broad group of students. So the item review process was completed in February of 2020. We're moving to standard setting, and our standard setting process is where, again, a large group of professionals will come together. And again, we have the K-12 space represented, we have 2-year and 4-year in higher ed, and we have adult basic education represented. And they'll come together and review the weights of what they perceive to be the weights of items and things like that. And that's where we'll actually get to a better understanding of what the actual cut scores will be. Hopefully, and just in advance, this whole table, due to the coronavirus pandemic, has been modified. So we'll be forthcoming with information on that in the webinar on Tuesday. But just for the sake of the presentation, I'm going to present you with the dates that are here. The standard setting process, and then the new college readiness benchmarks, once they're approved by the board, they'll be made public. So if you want a sneak peek, if we do are able to get them in for April, watch the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board meeting on April 23rd. We'll launch into beta testing over the summer. And again, this date has been pushed back. And in beta testing, each institutional administrator, so each test administrator account, each institution that's authorized to administer the TSIA, they will be given a certain number of tests that they can they'll be given a certain number of tests that they can use to let me get back to that screen. That they can use to administer the TSIA to faculty and staff on their respective campus. Now, it's not going to be this broad-reaching, every staff and faculty can take it on the campus, but there will be a limited number. And again, the launch date we're anticipating for fall 2020. Here's some of the anticipated enhancements. We're realigning the assessment to all of the revised standards. So currently, the assessment is aligned to the TEKS. However, the TEKS were revised, I believe, in its 2018, as well as the Texas College and Career Readiness Standards, where you see TXCCR, and the AEL standards were revised and released in, I believe, early 2019. And then we have, and that's the Adult Education and Literacy 2.0 standards. And then we have the National Reporting Systems Educational Functional Level Descriptors. So when we look at the overall tests, those items that will be pulled primarily for the first 20 questions that a student will experience are related to those questions that are aligned with the Texas College and Career Standards and the revised TEKS. And for the revised TEKS, we're looking at the Algebra 2 TEKS and the English 3. And those are the only two STAR end of course assessments that actually have that are aligned to college readiness as it relates to if the student passes that STAR EOC, that it transposes into an exemption with the TSI. We're integrating reading and writing. Yay! So what we've already been asking you in actually what's already in rule for you to do, which is to integrate reading and writing. And with House Bill 2223, the only course that can be co-reqed with a first college level course for the purposes of House Bill 2223 is an exit level integrated reading and writing course. So we're taking the step to move in the direction of integrating reading and writing. So now with, in that particular section will be named ELAR, or English Language Arts and Reading, and it will comprise writing. That when the student has that score, it'll be a little easier for you to utilize those scores in placement. We've reduced the diagnostic test to 1. Throughout the presentation, you may have heard me mention adult basic education. So when we talk about the TSIA, there's pretty much three parts. So 3 kind of like mini tests associated with it. You have the college readiness classification test, so to speak, the CRC as we call it, where that's the first 20 questions. And then if the student is not successful in demonstrating the benchmark in those first 20 questions, it then goes to 1 or 2 diagnostics pending their score. For the lower skill students, for if you scored really low, like in math, if you scored a 335 or below, you go into the adult basic education diagnostic, which then would give you an additional indicator score of a level 1 through 6. However, if you scored in math 336 to 349, you go into what we call the developmental education diagnostic. That particular diagnostic, as it currently stands, does not yield an additional indicator level of any sort. However, it's assumed that all of the students going into that developmental education diagnostic, whether it be for math or reading, writing, are levels 5, 6. So also with the assessment, we seek to improve the transportability of test results. So there's a student portal that students now will have access to, where they can actually go in and review their scores, and they'll be able to send their scores to institutions of higher education. And With this, they'll actually be able to send their scores to the institution of higher education when they actually sit for the assessment. So when the student takes the assessment, they'll be able to send their scores up to 3 institutions at that particular time. And then once their test administration is complete and they have those scores, they can then go into the student portal and send to an undefined amount of institutions of higher education. So hopefully that will improve your ability to process student scores and things like that. However, more information will be coming forth about that through the College Board trainings that were currently happening, which now are on pause due to the pandemic that we're facing. However, we'll be in touch with you regarding that. And then when the portal actually opens it's going to be in beta phase prior to the actual launch of the TSIA2, we'll make that known so students can start utilizing that as well. And we can start developing institutional protocol to how you want to handle the receiving test scores in advance. This does not work the same way as the way the College Board transfers SAT data to institutions. So with SAT data, it's actually one big file that's comprised and it's sent to the institution, or the institution can download it and it can be uploaded into the student information system. However, with the current way that this is working, once the student initiates the sending of the scores, it'll send an email to a designated email account at the institution, where the institution can then unlock that score report with their TSIA platform credentials. So be on the lookout for more information about that. And if you have specific questions about that, feel free to reach out to me via email. This is the perfect time. I'm actually working from home right now, so I'm available to take a lot of Microsoft Teams conferences, conference calls, and things like that to help work through these types of issues and understanding. And last, the biggest thing that we're proud of with the TSIA2 is that it will offer free customized online learning support for students not meeting the college readiness benchmark. One thing, actually, let me back up before I own in on that point. One thing I want to highlight about the reduction of the diagnostic test to 1. So we're not going to have the ABE diagnostic and the developmental education diagnostic. It's just the diagnostic. So for any student that's underprepared, they will go into the diagnostic, and every student that's underprepared will receive a level indicator, and that additional indicator of level 1 through 6. And that was the point I forgot to own in on when I was talking about reducing the diagnostic test to 1. But again, our most prize joy of the TSIA2, free customized online learning support. And this will be delivered through Pearson's perspective. So let's just say a student takes the TSIA2. This is not an actual benchmark that I'm used, but for example, let's just say we're using the same scale and the student scores it's deemed 338 is the cutoff, and a student makes a 337. That student would then receive an individualized indicator code on their individual score report that they can click on, that will take them to a customized set of prepared lessons that they can engage in to address the specific skill gaps that were demonstrated on the TSIA. We're really proud of that, and we're really ready for that to roll out. Now, we have been in contact with the College Board, and we do anticipate the perspective tool rolling out prior to the rollout of the TSIA2. However, at that point, it'll be available for essentially beta testing and for the use of college faculty to develop curriculum for their co-requisite interventions and things like that. However, it will not be individually customized for the students until the launch of the TSIA2. And again, the effective date is fall 2020. The implementation details, the launch date as it currently stands is August 31st, 2020. And again, I share with you, tune in to the webinar on this upcoming Tuesday at 2 p.m. The information will be published on the TSI DE webpage at the coordinating board, as well as we're going to email it out today to, if you follow us on the listserv, you'll get it. If you are a developmental education program survey contact, you will receive it. We're sending it pretty broad to make sure that the word gets out. And if you want to make sure that you get the information and you're not sure if you're on any of those listservs or if you actually get updates from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, feel free to email me directly and I'll make sure that you get the information regarding the webinar on Tuesday, either later today or first thing Monday. And again, for regarding the implementation, the TSI, current TSIA score, so TSIA 1 as we're kind of coining it in the, that we've coined the new one, the TSIA 2, they will remain valid for 5 years from date of testing. So what does that mean? Institutions are going to have to pay attention to the nuances. So particularly as it relates to the integration of reading and writing, if a student has not demonstrated college readiness in both subject areas for reading and writing, and they opt to retest, the student will need to retest on the ELAR if it's after the implementation of the TSIA 2. So just note that as well. There we go. And again, current TSIA scores remain valid from date of testing. So if this institution wants to use that reading or writing score for placement, they can. However, you have to understand that they're no longer just reading only intense courses and writing only intense courses. It pretty much makes everything go to IRW. So regardless of what you choose to do with those scores, when you enroll the student, they will be enrolled in an IRW course. There'll be no more standalone developmental education, reading and writing. So just definitely make that note. And again, for students who are retesting, they cannot combine TSIA 1 and TSIA 2 test results. Of all the enhancements of the TSIA 2, the only thing that is not changing is the right placer essay. So the right placer essay will remain the same. It'll still be measured on with the indicator of 1 through 8. And again, what that passing score is for the TSIA 2 will be determined when we have standard setting. And again, for your review, I kind of talked about all of these in detail. And now I'll talk about the student portal, the tutorials for the calculator and highlighting features. So those supports that are available to students throughout the test, they're moving those outside of the platform. So as of now, students don't have access to those until they actually sit down and take the test. And then they kind of get it right before. Now you're able to in your pre-assessment activity, direct students to this particular resource to have them understand how the calculators work for math and how the highlighting feature works for all areas of the test. And I say all areas of the test because the highlighting feature, it won't just be germane to the ELAR section where they're reading passages, but even in the math section, the student will be able to use that highlight feature to highlight particular areas for their own use. So they can highlight in the question to bring their attention to particular things. And again, with the free customized online support, it'll be available to all students not meeting the college readiness benchmark and is recommended for use with the high school college prep course and the TSIA college readiness courses. We're improving data matching, and that's there for your review, and accommodations. That's there for your review. And we're actually going to develop guidelines for accommodations for the TSIA 2 and we'll be in touch with you regarding that. But when it's all said and done, we really want to make sure that the TSIA is being administered with equity and understanding that the way that accommodations are granted and applied in K-12 is different than that of how they're applied and granted in higher education. So we will have an expectation, and we'll be encouraging our institutions of higher education to work with our K-12 partners to develop the most appropriate accommodations for students. And particularly where we talk about the calculator, the use of a handheld calculator is a common accommodation in K-12 that actually could disrupt the integrity of the score for the math section of the TSIA if we allow the use of a handheld calculator. Because given that the TSIA is a computer adaptive assessment, it's predetermined for each math question what type of calculator that will be available. So for some questions, it's a 4-function calculator. For some, it's a scientific, and for some, it's a graphing. So that can be accomplished with the use of a handheld calculator accommodation. However, that's one of the reasons we were adamant in working with the coordinating board to move the tutorials for how to use the calculator and some of the other resources outside of the purview of the platform to make sure students have access to play with those and really understand how it works prior to taking the assessment. Here, and this will be totally reviewed, but totally revamped as it relates to the training schedule for the TSIA2. However, we want to make sure that you're aware of the training dates that are available. And this is not necessarily for the TSIA2 in terms of learning more about the assessment. This is particularly for those who oversee the administration of the tests on their campuses. So they actually have a management or proctoring responsibility to the platform. So if you do have a management or proctoring responsibility for the TSIA on your respective campuses, you would need to attend one of these mandatory trainings. And if you click the map, it's hyperlinked to the College Board's live document that constantly changes, and that'll be updated as we respond to the pandemic. Again, here's an overview of the training opportunities and what that session looks like. That it's mostly about the platform and really having the field now understand some of the critical pieces we've had to put in place to accomplish some things that we wanted to do as we move the assessment forward. And then here's both Suzanne and I's information. And like I said, I apologize. I'm going to have to get off and get on another call real quick. However, I do lend myself, Aaron, if you do have time available later today, I'm free after about 11:30. Just shoot me an email and let me know what time you would like to dial me back in for question and answer. If you have specific questions or concerns, definitely my contact information is there. Feel free, go ahead and shoot me an email. I have links to, although I'm out of the office, if you call and leave me a voicemail, I can respond to you that way as well. If you would like to set up a call individually about something you heard that you have a question about, or with a team from your institution, I'm available for that as well. I do thank you for allowing me to share time with you this morning about the Texas Success Initiative 2.0, its implementation plan, and what we have going on at the Higher Education Coordinating Board. And this presentation will be made available to you. And I wish you a great rest of your training, safety in this pandemic. And it has been great sharing with you this morning. You all have a great day.
Thank you so much, Keylan. I will be sending Keylan an email that will just go ahead and we can maybe get him back in right at the beginning of the 12 o'clock session. So I'll make note of all of the questions that have been put in the questions panels. There are a couple of really good questions that I think are there. So if we want to go ahead and do that, then we will plan for that. So I want to thank Keylan again, and thank you all. I apologize for all the technical difficulties we've been having. My internet access has been very, very spotty this morning. So if you will just make note, the next session will begin at 11. In the chat function, I have posted the link. It is a different meeting space than the one that we are meeting in now. I can unmute folks, and so if there's any questions, basically any technical questions that folks have right now, I can leave it open for a few minutes, but other than that, y'all are welcome to log off, and then we will see you at 11 o'clock.
Hi, Erin. This is Laurie.
Hi. Yes, ma'am.
So is the webinar the recording going to be shared out later?
It will, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
So I will be taking care of that, and we will be posting it on our YouTube channel as soon as possible and making that available.
Great. And then I also wanted to get some clarification. If we attend all the 3 webinars today, is there any UT extension credit?
Yes, yes, if I may answer that. You need to register this week at UT, and you can go to UT Extension Catch the Next on the internet, and it will pop up, or it will be in the document that I forwarded to you. This is Maria Chavez.
Hi, Dr. Chavez. It's good to hear your voice.
Great, wonderful, thank you. So please go ahead and register. For those that would like to just audit the course, you have that option as well. So you have that to, add to your resume if you wish. Yes.
I think that, I'm sorry. I think some of our colleagues were not clear on that, so they may not have attended this morning, not realizing that they needed to be here for all 3. So I just wanted to let you know that, but I will send them an email letting them know that if they're interested to reach out to you maybe about why they weren't here at the 10 o'clock. I don't know if that's
right. Well, to earn the credit, not only do you have to be engaged in all webinars, which you can actually do at a later date as well. As long as you do register for the course in time with UT.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
There is also the other work, that was given to you in the book. And for each of the sections, you will have to complete a reflection to be able to earn all the contact hours that would be necessary. But these webinars would be available after today, over the weekend, whenever. Erin will let you know when you can access them. And there is that way of being able to complete the requirements. I do not have to submit grades for a while till the end of the semester, so there will be time to complete all of the readings and all of the reflections that go with that. The one thing that is not flexible is the registration with UT. Okay, thanks.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Chavez. I appreciate that information. And thank you all for organizing this for us. It was very informative.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurie. We appreciate it.
I apologize about we're just learning how to roll with technical difficulties as we're going. So I appreciate everybody's patience and for letting me know like when stuff was going wrong and things like that. So please continue to do that throughout the day. So yes, okay. So I will make note of the different questions, and then I will let Keylan know to come back in on our 12 o'clock session so that folks can answer those questions. So In that case, we have a little bit of a break. So if folks want to hop off and come back around 11 o'clock, and we will pick up where we left off with Dr. Linda Hagedorn.
Sounds good. Thank you, Erin. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you in a little bit.
Great. Thank you. Great job, Erin.
Great information. Thank you.